Welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up for the week of 18 July 2021. Pornageddon, Pegasus, Kaseya, SeriousSam, the FBI wants hackers dead or alive, SonicWall, HPrinters, all the show wrap-ups on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. For teams looking to inject some security into the DevOps lifecycle, the Uptick Security Analytics platform offers complete security observability for your cloud workloads, including hosts, VMs, containers, and micro VMs. Uptick analyzes builds in development and at runtime for real-time detection of misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, and malicious behavior. Security Weekly listeners can sign up for a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/upticks. With the skills gap increasing, it's more important than ever to train your staff effectively and efficiently. Offensive Security provides training for your organization designed by the same minds behind Kali Linux. Here are 2 recent offerings from OffSec. OffSec Academy gives you the chance to earn industry-leading OSCP certification with dedicated one-on-one mentoring. You can also try Proving Grounds Enterprise, created exclusively by Offensive Security's InfoSec experts for highly realistic simulated networks. Visit securityweekly.com/offsec to learn more.
All right, I'm Doug White. Let's first wrap up all the show topics for the week. On Application Security Weekly number 158, John and Mike had David DeSando, the Senior Director of Product Management at GitLab, on the show. David was on to talk about the open source in DevSecOps and how there's been a lot of misinformation about the risk of open source and supply chain attacks and so on. I mean, obviously, there's always been that sort of debate about, proprietary stuff that you can't, that if people can look at it, they'll figure out. But I'm like, make better code and you won't have that problem. Somebody will figure it out anyway. But anyway, David wanted to talk about how GitLab deals with this. So an interesting segment in DevSecOps. On Business Security Weekly number 224, Adrian, Lee, and Matt had Patrick O'Reilly, the Chief Product Officer and co-founder at CyberSam, on to talk about how all the attacks and issues in recent years, there's been sort of a shift away from the focus on just trying to block things and into analyzing risk. So Patrick talked about how he has worked with members of the Global 500 to achieve continuous compliance and risk management, and how CyberSam deals with this. So again, a very modern topic. This is stuff that's really starting to emerge in our area. In the second segment, how much does a CEO or business leader need to know about cybersecurity? How businesses can drive innovation while delivering operational excellence, 6 resumes mistakes CISOs still make, and other stories. On Enterprise Security Weekly 235, Adrian, Paul, and Tyler brought on Ed Rossi, the Vice President of Product Management, Asset and Inventory, and Discovery at Qualys. Ed was talking about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is security teams relying on IT for asset inventory. Particularly it was in the context of security, since those don't usually exist. I always had a lot of problems with that in audit, because you go in and the first thing we would always ask is give us a network diagram, give us an asset inventory, and a lot of times, you'd get it, and if they had it at all, and they would sort of hand it to you, and you'd look at it, and it was dated like 1987 or something like that, and you're going, I don't think this is current, and they're like, oh, it's closed. Right. I see you have a Novell server here. Ed also talked about the role asset inventory plays in your overall security strategy. In the second segment, the news, and in the third segment, Mark Rawls and Wayne Haber, the President and Chief Operating Officer at Acunetics and the Director of Engineering at GitLab, respectively, joined in, and Mark was talking about where to start getting back on track with web app security after the pandemic. A big topic now, because a lot of people have not only did they struggle to switch over to everybody working from home, now they're having to switch again to kind of this, interregnum of hybrid work. And there's still a lot of debate about whether people will ever go back to the office full time, or they'll stay at home, or it's somewhere in the middle, which is probably where it'll be. And Wayne was on talking about a difficult subject, transparency in your security organization. And I tell you, that is one of the hardest things of all, because I've never done an audit or an interview or any of those kind of things where the IT or security organization really wanted to talk about what they were doing. And in fact, forever, that was my very first pen test back in like 1986, where I almost got fired because they did not want us revealing how things were done. And we wrote it up, and it was an internal report, guys, come on. But it was, 86, and they're like, no good can come of this. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 80, Jeff, Josh, Kat, Valentine, and Scott were talking with Joseph Kirkpatrick, the president at Kirkpatrick Price. And they primarily focused on issues around security controls being kept out of scope. And oh boy, talk about another audit issue. This was this whole thing where you fought, when you were auditing, and even though I worked for internal audit, but you fought with the company about what was going to be audited, and they fought like crazy to keep things out of scope. And they were talking about a case where a client basically fought really, really hard to keep something out of scope that had a lot of issues. And, once you do that, then the auditors don't look at it. And I mean, audit is supposed to be helping you. I know everybody feels negative about it, but it's like, we're trying to help you so you don't get taken down. But unfortunately, you're fighting us tooth and nail to keep us from looking at stuff that is not in compliance. In the second segment, they continue talking about that. On Security Weekly News number 135, Jason Wood provided commentary on how the U.S. State Department is putting bounties on cybercriminals. Like $10,000 dead or alive kind of posters sort of thing. I mean, they do that for everything else. I mean, people were acting like this was some new, vigilanteism or something, but I mean, they do this for everything. They do this for everything from like bank robbery to kidnapping to terrorism to, evil billionaires in space or who knows what. And they offer bounties for this kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't think there was any big surprise there. And I talked about this in another news story as well. On Paul's Security Weekly number 703, up first was Jeff Tinsley, the CEO at RealMe. They were talking about safety in online dating spaces. And, yeah, I mean, I've never actually done that, so I don't. That was after my time, but I really, the first time I saw an online dating service and I saw somebody using one, I was like, wow, that's pretty, I mean, I don't guess any scarier than going down to, Studio 54 and meeting people or whatever. But anyway, they were talking about how the RealMe platform is hoping to create in-app background checks using publicly available data. So like immediately they're going to pull down and say, well, this person's got like 4, outstanding warrants for cannibalism, which might put you off the whole thing. Very interesting product. With a lot of controversy around it. In the second segment, Gordon Draper, the founder and CEO at cybermarket.com, came on to talk about cybermarket.com. And that is a site where consultants and clients can meet up. So a different kind of dating. It's just clients and consultants instead of, people seeking significant others. Maybe they should combine RealMe with cybermarket.com so you can check up on your consultants and see what kind of background they've got before you meet with them the first time. That's not a bad idea, actually. Okay, I get a cut. I want a cut of that. And in the third segment, the news. My favorite thread of the week is going to be the controversy surrounding Pegasus. I mean, how could I not talk about this? I have been saying, as long as I've been on Security Weekly, I've talked about your privacy is likely going away. I really think that. I really think that the traditional concept of privacy is starting to fade from these shores. And I've talked about the novel The Light of Other Days for years and years on these shows, on Secure Digital Life, on the news, on Security Weekly, because The Light of Other Days was a novel that Arthur C. Clarke co-wrote, and it is about where all privacy has gone. There is no possibility of privacy. And in the novel, of course, they can see in time, so they can actually see what you did and when you did it and who did what to whom. And, if somebody wants to watch you in the shower, they can. And it was just about how society kind of has to adapt to this model. I don't think we're anywhere near that, and there's not any technology that would allow that. But I think a great deal of what's traditionally considered private is rapidly becoming public. And, or maybe it even gets more of a Philip K. Dick kind of feel to it, where like machine learning or something like that just starts to predict what you might have done or you might do or where you might be at any given point in time based on your historical pattern. But Pegasus is a kind of place to start talking about what are the limits of this. I mean, in the free market capitalistic view, we're just making money, right? And I mean, if somebody misuses cocaine that we manufacture, well, that's their problem. It's not the manufacturer's problem. And Pegasus, the company basically says they only sell to governments. a lot of open territory there. Law enforcement, a lot of open territory there, and military. I mean, Myanmar is a nation state, so I guess they're eligible. North Korea is a nation state. The Rhodesian secret police. I'm not going to mention any real secret police. The Rhodesian secret police was old, but they're gone, so I'm not afraid of them. I mean, they were law enforcement. And I don't know what defines military, so I don't know if that means that you have on camo or it means you're part of a nation-state military or a militia or who knows what. Does it include contractors, mercenaries? I don't know. Anyway, I have a funny feeling that when you're a commercial entity and you make money by selling product, you tend to sell it to anybody who can afford to buy it. At least, that's not what they say, but, anyway, Pegasus, if you aren't familiar with it, is a piece of malware, essentially, that gets embedded on your mobile device through primarily email or phishing links. But, well, there are other ways they were able to get that onto people's devices. And then the licensed users, so the person who has bought this product, can track you. They can see who you're talking with. They can see your contacts. They can read your email, your text, your messages. They can see what videos you're watching. Pretty much anything that's on your mobile device. So, not to get into politics, but let's say that President Muffley, so we won't use any real name, President Muffley decides he doesn't like the idea of journalists saying he looks overweight on camera. And maybe President Muffley decides he's going to investigate those journalists. So they push, they go out, they say, well, this could be national security interest, and they're coming right for us. And so they take their licensed Pegasus software, which in the U.S. there is supposedly not allowed. There's issues with warrants and other protections, and supposedly they're just not allowing this software to be used in the United States. But Muffley's the president of Grand Fenwick. He's not the president of the United States. He's the president of Grand Fenwick, and he decides to send around the troops to teach the journalists a hard lesson a la the Sturmabteilung in Nazi Germany. Now, I don't know which view is pro, which view is the con. I mean, the other side of this is that the product does provide a mechanism for legitimate users to surveil terrorists and criminals, just like a wiretap. So our police agencies use wiretaps all the time when they feel that crimes are being committed, and so it's pretty easy to get support for this, since you just toss around word like terrorist and criminal, and everybody's like, well, yeah, nobody wants terrorists and criminals around. Now, I mean, there's always abusers of this, of course, and a terrorist is only a terrorist in the eye of the beholder, correct? I mean, President Muffley may declare Amazon a terrorist organization if he wants to, and all of a sudden, they start surveilling Jeff Bezos, and then Bezos declares Grand Fenwick a terrorist state, and just starts surveilling President Muffley and his kids, and who knows what. And maybe Muffley declares that anybody who doesn't agree with him is a terrorist and a criminal and should be attacked openly, often, and with extreme prejudice, for the good of all. If you think of the children. I mean, Pegasus is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to people's privacy and the abuse of privilege that leads to loss of privacy in this way. I mean, we see this tons of times with traffic cams, people in police departments using traffic cams and other surveillance techniques to stalk people, to spy on their ex, to spy on their girlfriends or boyfriends or significant other friends or whatever the appropriate term is. But look at Khashoggi. I mean, Khashoggi was a journalist for the Washington Post who wrote a lot of stories about the Saudis, and he was targeted and killed using this software. I think it was this one, or it was something like it. And he reported facts that certain parties didn't want released. And he ended up, getting basically executed in a horrific way. Also, that Princess Latifah, who was She was the daughter of someone who was basically, she said, holding her prisoner. She managed to get on some yacht, was trying to escape, and they tracked her down using this software because she was on her way out of the country, and all the commandos came and got her and brought her back. I think the potential for abuse is always going to exist with this kind of software, and I think if the potential is there, it will ultimately be abused. Maybe we say that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or something like that. I don't know the answer to it, and I'm not quite ready to have to carry my phone around in a lead box to prevent it from being tracked. But I do think it's something we're going to have to deal with. I mean, even in the United States, because somebody will abuse this, and we'll just say, oh, they were terrorists, so we're going to abuse it. You saw the kind of stuff that happened after 9/11 and the Patriot Act and all these rules that were basically suspended people's rights, suspended habeas corpus, suspended all these different things. And we've certainly seen misuse of all this sort of stuff in the past. And I know it's going to be hard for you to imagine one of our politicians being vindictive enough to misuse the government to target journalists or citizens they don't agree with, or news organizations or lawyers that I know it's hard to imagine, but I can. The whole privacy argument starts with the government coming for you. So this is where privacy came from, because you have a different opinion, and people were scared of fascist totalitarian governments saying, well, we'll just round everybody up that doesn't agree with us and say, oh, everything is great, less is more is good. East Asia is our enemy. Oceania was never our enemy. East Asia has always been our enemy, kind of stuff. Literally, Bo, this is why people claim you need privacy, right? Because even if you aren't doing anything wrong, but I don't know what you can do to stop this short of going off the grid. You can probably prevent Pegasus by just using safe hygiene, although it would apparently, it could have exploited zero-click on iOS. But what about the next one? And the next one after that? What's the name of the guy who sweeps up after Pegasus passes through? Is that's the name of the next one? Is it Gus, Rocco? I don't remember the Greek legend, but maybe Rocco. I don't know. Anyway, it's definitely a threat, and it's going to get worse. And now the news. So Kaseya, which was, of course, a big supply chain attack, acquired apparently a master decryptor key for REvil ransomware. If you missed it, the Kaseya supply chain attacks occurred on the 2nd of July and exploited some Microsoft 0 days in the virtual server administrator platform that was produced by Kaseya. REvil managed to get ransomware in that way, and they demanded $70 million and then later lowered it to $50 million when they weren't getting paid, because this affected a large number of people, because it was a supply chain attack. And then REvil disappeared. Dun, 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 dun. On the 13th of July, in the midst of all this, they just sort of up and vanished. All their servers went down, including the ones where you pay up and get keys. So even if you wanted to pay, you couldn't, and they seem to still be missing. Nobody knows if they just went underground, or they changed their name, or a Hellfire missile came down the chimney. I don't know. But the announcement that they have a universal decryptor means that Kaseya probably paid a ransom. Or maybe Tom Cruise went in through some conveniently Tom Cruise-sized ductwork and dangled for some Tom Cruise-linked wires long enough to extract the keys for them. It's not clear at this point. The delayed the Tokyo Summer Olympics starts today, and the FBI issued a warning that cyber attacks on the Olympics, including attempts to hijack the video feeds, particularly because there are no live events. Everything will be on video. They're not allowing spectators into the stadiums or anything else. The Olympics is that thing where every 2 years we get to learn about the many nuances of sports we've never heard of in the first place. Like hammer toss. I know that's an ancient sport, but it's just kind of like you don't notice it much until the Olympics comes around, and then people are talking about the hammer toss, and there's all kinds of subreddits in the hammer toss, like trapezoidal hammer tossing and whatever else. Anyway, a breach back in May at Fujitsu meant that clients of Fujitsu may have had credential loss, and some of those clients were part of the Olympics committee, and as well as being part of the government in Japan. So the warning went on to say that Russia has declared a silent war against the International Olympic Committee, which is called the IOC, since the IOC banned Russia from participating in the international events for a variety of doping violations. China has also been escalating tension with Japan. So basically, add all that together, you get some pretty good intrigue and a lot of worries about the cybersecurity of the Olympics. And of course, the ransomware people are always, out there as well, sending out emails saying, win a free trip to Tokyo this week to see the finals of the hammer toss or the trapezoidal hammer toss, and or ransomware targeting the broadcasting networks that are carrying the Olympics or the IOC itself. I mean, all of that would be pretty much a big ransom situation. HiveNightmare, or Silent Sam, as it may be called, I like Silent Sam better, is another Microsoft Windows bug, as the name implies when we say hives. This one relates to the registry data, which are stored in files called hives. Creepy. I mean, a hive just sounds all wriggly and wet and dripping jelly, kind of Escher alien vault full of leathery, slimy eggs that you have to wade through. And they're all just sort of squirming, like all those good words. Yeah, why not? Anyway, 3 hive files on Microsoft contain a lot of tasty things that everybody's always looking for. And they're kept in a hidden directory that's supposedly not accessible by the user and all this, the usual stuff that, of course, none of which is really, really true. But it is hard to get to the hives. Unless you have, physical access to the system and you can boot it up with something else. But one of the Hive files is called SAM, which is Security Account Manager, and not our amazing producer who is also called Sam, which is for Samantha. Okay, so Hive SAM. So now I'm thinking our producer Sam with a laser beam on her head saying, "I'm Locutus of the Borg." I think that the Christmas party, that's going to be a thing. And she's standing in like a leathery, slimy alien vault full of alien eggs that hatch out Security Weekly host or something like that. Anyway, I know mixed genres are always bad, crossing the streams, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, all that good stuff. Anyway, this malware, which is also called SeriousSam, and which I prefer the name, allowed the authors of the article to access the SAM file, which is a lot like the shadow password files on Linux. And they could get to that shadow copy space from older shadow copies that are stored on the system drive. Basically, what that means is it's a big game over if it gets exploited. But they did it, and they did it without admin privilege, so that could be bad. The workaround for Microsoft is to reset the privileges on the shadow copies, remove all the shadow copies, and restore points, and then create a new restore point. My caution to you is that before you do this workaround, ensure your current state is not infected or problematic, because you're about to delete all your restore points and then you won't have them anymore. So just think about that before you go in there and delete all your restore points, asking for a friend. SonicWall issued a warning that a ransomware campaign is imminent, and it is targeting its end-of-life equipment. The statement said that through the and I love this speech, through the course of collaboration with trusted third parties, which sounds like the beginning of a Winston Churchill speech or something, right? Through the course of I like that. Through the course of collaboration with trusted third parties, 7 years ago, SonicWall said that threat actors were actively targeting secure mobile access devices, 100 series, and the SRA product that are unpatched or at end of life and unpatchable even. They had 8X firmware. They went on to say that an imminent ransomware campaign would be using stolen credentials. So this stemmed from a vulnerability that was disclosed last month, and they basically said if you can't patch it, disconnect it. So pretty bad. The U.S. government hung wanted posters out by the town square. We mentioned this earlier, that said wanted foreign hackers dead or alive, $10 million reward. They also said rewards will be paid out in cryptocurrency, so, anonymously. Wow. Now, if you it didn't say dead, actually. But, and some people got upset about this, but they do this for everything. Phone in a tip and get paid. What a system. Now, the cynic in me says maybe you end up with a lot of hackers trying to see who can be the most valuable on the hit list. Oh, man, Malcolm, you're only worth $10,000. Me, I'm worth $100,000. Not to mention virtual swatting and all kinds of other stuff. But who knows? Maybe it will help. Maybe. It would probably be a bunch of tips that, a guy named Chet who lives in Hong Kong on the Kowloon side of the bay, is just doing bad things. Can I get $1 million? Come on. I think his name was Chet. Maybe it was something else. Anyway, as long as we're in the government, the U.S. and its allies, which included the EU, the UK, and NATO, issued a first-time formal statement criticizing China for being bad cyber actors. The statement called China's behavior as irresponsible and inconsistent, as China has a goal of being a world leader. An indictment of 4 Chinese hackers was also unsealed by the Justice Department, and they had claims that they were not only working for the Ministry of State Security, which is the People's Republic of China, I don't know, is that the CIA? Is it the FBI? I'm not sure. But they said the hackers were also conducting ransomware attacks, extortion, cryptojacking, and other personal gain initiatives outside of their work for the government. China said the claims were fabricated. This did mark the first in a modern age of calling out China. So you saw it here first. On those same lines, the FBI and CISA released guidance for dealing with APT-40, which is also associated with the Ministry of State Security in China. APT-40 has a whole pile of aliases and AKAs, but I think I'll use the one Bronze Mohawk. I kind of like that one best. There's a whole bunch of other ones as well. Anyway, a link to the full report is in in the article I put on the wiki, and has information about their activities, their tactics, their techniques, and also provides a list of mitigations, which are useful and specific to Bronze Mohawk, but they all sound like pretty good ideas for just about any situation, like patch, protect, protect your credentials, that sort of thing. Sentinel Labs found a high-severity flaw in HP, Samsung, and Xerox printer drivers. Apparently, this went all the way back to 2005, and they reported this finding to HP in February of 2021, and HP released a security update on 19th of May. The finding listed over 380 different HP and Samsung printers and a dozen or so Xerox printers. I didn't even know Xerox still made printers. They must be old. The bug is in a printer driver that is installed on all these whenever you connect the printer. So it's just installed from the firmware. And it is actually a buffer overrun. So basically what that would do is allow you to access the system account using the buffer overrun. And then you could run code in the kernel mode. Yeah, that might be interesting. Yeah, there is a patch. You should probably use it. And finally, a lot of people got a Pornageddon surprise with their newspapers yesterday. And I keep imagining Ward Cleaver saying, June, there's something strange going on with the newspaper. I know what you thought I was going to say. Anyway, a porn company called 5-Star Porn HD apparently bought a domain called Vidme, which belonged to a defunct company called Vidme, which was trying to compete with YouTube back in like 2017. It's not exactly clear what happened, but somehow as soon as they acquired that domain, all these ad links on the Washington Post, the New York Times, and all these other, like big-time news sites suddenly started linking to porn videos like Bonfire of the Panties and Bill and Ted's Excellent. I'm not going to say that on a family program. Anyway, 5-Star Porn had no comment, but I will have to do a bit more research to find out what happened. And that's a news wrap-up for the week of 18 July 2021 in the declining time of plague, or it may be coming back now. Summer's rapidly slipping away and con season will be on us. We will be at Unlocked in December in Orlando. We'll also be at InfoSec World. And I think we have a couple of people at Black Hat and DEF CON, but not me. Nobody sent me this year. So see you next time.